Good morning. Welcome to First Unitarian Toronto. We're delighted to have you with us today, wherever you may be. My name's Dallas Bergen, and I'm joined by our summer minister, Ben Robbins, pianist Adam Sakiyama, and Matt Rideout, our AV engineer. I'd also like to extend a warm welcome to our friends from the Hamilton Unitarian Church who are with us this morning. As we begin today, we acknowledge that in Toronto, we gather on the traditional lands of the Anishinaabe and Ojibwa, Haudenosaunee, and the Wendat. These lands were covered by Treaty 13 and were part of the Dish with One Spoon Wampum Belt Covenant. As we come to terms with a long history of injustice and systemic oppression, may we who are settlers here do the work to learn the injustices of the past and the present and recognize our shared responsibility to the urgent and ongoing task of reconciliation and justice for Indigenous peoples. And now I welcome you into deeper connection with yourself, into beloved community with one another. The flaming chalice is a symbol of this faith, one that brings together ideas of freedom of religious thought and the sacred space of spiritual community. If you have a chalice or candle at home, I invite you to join me in kindling your flame as we together speak the words of our chalice lighting. As we light our chalice, may its flame kindle within us the warmth of compassion, the glow of love, the fire of commitment, and the light of truth.
Our call to worship today is Song of the Open Road by Walt Whitman, slightly adapted. Afoot and lighthearted, I take to the road, open and free, the world before me. I inhale great draughts of space, the east and the west, the north and the south. All seem beautiful to me. I say to those I meet, you have done such good to me. Whoever you are, come travel with me. However sweet these stores, however convenient this dwelling, we cannot remain here. However sheltered this port, we must not anchor. Together, the inducements shall be greater. We will sail pathless and wild seas. We will go where the wind blows. Forward, after the great companions, they too are on the road. Onward to that which is endless, to undergo much, tramping by day and long nights, to know the universe as a road, as many roads, as roads for traveling souls. So come, let us travel together. From our many and varied paths, we arrive here as individuals to build up within and beyond walls a community of commitment and hope. To express the highest aspirations of our congregation, let us now join in the words of our covenant. Love is our doctrine. The quest for truth is our sacrament, and service is our prayer. To dwell together in peace, to seek knowledge in freedom, to serve life to the end that all souls shall grow into harmony with the divine. Thus do we covenant with each other and with all.
And I share with you this morning's announcements, which are brief as we are at the height of high summer, but we look forward to the resumption of activities soon. To our Hamilton friends gathering with us, the planned webinar today at noon with Sacagawea has been postponed. Keep an eye out for details on that rescheduling. And wonderful news here, Reverend Lynn Harrison returns later this week. And so the drop-in groups this week, Tuesday Awakenings and Thursday Reflections will resume. So Tuesday Awakenings and Thursday Reflections resume with Reverend Lynn this week. I invite you all to check out First Light for details regarding the resumption of these activities and to keep aware of any developments in our return to in-person gathering. We're moving forward carefully, but with anticipation. Thank you.
Our meditation words are, I call that mind free, by William Ellery Channing, adapted. I call that mind free which seeks after truth and meaning. I call that mind free which does not content itself with a passive or handed down outlook, which opens to the new light of today. I call that mind free which protects itself against the pressures of society and does not cower to other opinion. I call that mind free which is not framed by circumstance, which discovers everywhere the radiant signatures of the infinite spirit and rejoices in wider ways. I call that mind free which sets no bounds to its love.
We now enter a time of sharing the joys and concerns that weigh on us as individuals and as a community. The bonds of community are strengthened with the sharing of that which weighs on our hearts and minds, and the joys that lift us, both great and small. If you're watching on YouTube, please submit your joys and sorrows early, as there is a slight lag between live and our YouTube stream. We ask that loving care be extended to those who are unhoused, to all struggling to make ends meet, to those who struggle with their physical and mental health. May we have compassion as individuals, and may our governments create systems and policy that honors each person's worth and dignity. We're heartbroken at the news this morning of shooting in Kensington Market in Toronto. May the victims and their families be comforted, and may we see an end to gun violence. We watch with concern as COVID cases now begin to rise again across Canada, while border and gathering restrictions loosen. May we continue to take precautions to protect one another and advocate for equitable access to vaccines for all people in all nations. And we're thinking of those families right now with yet vaccinated school children, as families make difficult decisions this week regarding a return to school and in-person learning. We hold in loving care this planet and the interconnected web of all life as we observe the undeniable effects of climate change as fires rage across Western Canada and the United States and the Eastern Mediterranean. May those suffering displacement and loss find comfort. In the spirit of mutual love and care, I invite you to share your sorrows and concerns now by typing them in the chat or holding them in the silent sanctuary of your heart. I will do my best to honor these. From Paul Hawkins in Hamilton, whose husband Roy Dahl is now home from hospital and stable. Thank you for all your love and support. That's awesome news, Paul and Roy. We're happy for you. And from Sue Hansel, we're holding Sue's sister, who is struggling with disability complications. Thinking of you and her both, Sue. And from Harold Wright, concerned about the well-being of friend Roy, who is in isolation in hospital with pneumonia, which struck on his 81st birthday. Thinking of your friend, Harold. And in our complicated lives, there is also much to celebrate. Milestones in our own lives and the lives of our loved ones. This joy has been shared a couple of times, but I'll share it again. If you have not heard, our minister today and summer minister, Ben Robbins, has accepted a position as the interim minister of the UU Community Church in Washington County in Hillsboro, Oregon. Ben will begin by working remotely as the visa process moves forward. So happy for you, Ben, and excited for your future congregation. We celebrate the conclusion to the Tokyo Olympics. Congratulations to those athletes who have worked so hard to reach the heights of human achievement of the body, of strength, endurance, and agility. And we applaud the bravery and the consciousness of those athletes who use their profile and platform to advocate for their humanity, for their mental health, and for those who bring advocacy and attention to justice causes of all forms. And we give deep gratitude for our good health, for gifts of science, for scientists, for vaccines. We're thankful for the gathering of families and friends, for long-awaited and loving embraces. I invite you now to share your joys, all those things lifting your spirit and bringing you joy today. Joy at being alive and well, despite everything that has happened recently. Indeed, it is a wonderful expression of thanks and an important reminder. Thank you, Hendrik. And from Gabriel, happy to be joining you folks from Montreal on the unceded territory of the Kanien'kehá:ka Mohawk, feeling sorrow about the ongoing wildfires across the continent and hoping that we can band together to address the climate crisis with the urgency that it deserves. Indeed, and wonderful to have you with us, Gabriel. And Beth, my 15-year-old granddaughter in hospital after the long stress of the pandemic, not the only teenager suffering like this. And holding your granddaughter in our thoughts, Beth. Indeed, it's been hard in many different ways. From Sarah, wishing a happy 80th birthday to Dad, Bill Wilson. A warm and happy birthday. And from Winnie, my son and daughter-in-law, finally are in Nova Scotia visiting her parents. Wonderful news at family reunions. May they be safe and well. And a great visit to Ottawa last week to see family. First visit since December 2021. And from John, congratulations to Quinn for giving Canada a positive note in her history as we confront the harsh past. Thank you for lifting that up, John. And back to sorrow from Gabriel via YouTube, or not via YouTube, sorry. Feeling sorrow for the loss of a family cat who brought joy and love into our lives for 17 years. Feeling grateful for reconnecting with family as we support each other through the ups and downs of life. And feeling joyful and optimistic for new chapters in life that feel just around the corner. Indeed, a wonderful summary of joys and sorrows. And from Terry Marks, happy for settling Terry's daughter, Sienna, in Halifax, Nova Scotia. Exciting news, and Sienna, we wish you well on the next chapter. From El So, in Oregon with excessive COVID cases. Thank you to advocates protecting high risk and immune compromised, burdened with the consequences. Indeed, may wisdom and caution prevail. And from Nicole, who's experiencing the wonderful joy of baby kicks against stomach, and baby is very active. My husband and I are going to browse nursery furniture today. So happy for you and your family, Nicole. And from Sue Burlove, feeling excitement to meet the parents of Sue's son's girlfriend this week, seemingly future in-laws. Well, Sue, we wish you well with that meeting, and that is exciting news. And will you join me in a closing blessing? Spirit of life, known to us by many names and beyond all naming, may the sharing of all that lies on our hearts today draw us into deeper compassion and care for one another and for the wider world. May our hearts be filled with gratitude for the many blessings in our lives, great and small. Help us find compassion for all who suffer and whose dignity is denied. And may we give time and care to hear the stories and honor the truths of those who tell them so that we can be more compassionate and more loving, contributing to building a web of humanity that is more fair and more just. Amen.
Our reading today is The Unexpected Stairway by Barbara Road. My husband and I had been in a small hotel in Bergen for 2 days before we discovered the stairway. We had known it was there, of course. We had seen the sign, if not the thing itself. But we used the elevator. It saved time, we thought, and the energy we needed for exploring that charming Norwegian town on misty October days. After breakfast on the third day, when the elevator seemed slow in arriving, my husband decided to walk up. He was waiting at the elevator door when I and the elevator arrived on the fourth floor. "Let me show you something," he said, and led me back down the stairs he had just come up. I was dazzled. Instead of the sterile, institutional look of most hotel stairways, this one had the warm beauty of an art lover's home. There were bright paintings on all the walls, and at each landing, a rug in jeweled tones, a table with fresh flowers, an exquisite chair or two. When we reached the first floor, we walked up again, filled with energy, drinking in the beauty. "We might have missed this," I said. "We have to be careful about saving time and losing life," he said. My grandparents on both sides were Methodists. On one side, they were fairly active in the church their whole lives. My granddad even taught religion in high school, which I believe meant he taught Christianity. He would implore me to read Bible stories. "They are good stories," he would say. Granddad didn't say that they were true stories. He didn't say that they were the only good stories. But Bible stories were the only stories that he implored me to read. My granny's relationship with the church seemed to be primarily about community. She liked getting together on Sundays with good people. On the other side of my family, my grandparents gave no sign that they were interested in church, and perhaps they stopped going as soon as they had the choice. So many people come to Unitarian congregations from other traditions. Perhaps they love religious community, but the one they grew up in didn't do it for them. Maybe the stories they learned were good stories, but not the only good stories. And perhaps some of the lessons they were taught did not fit with what their own conscience said. And so many of us here are here because we did not accept the religion that was handed down to us. The religion handed down to us was not broad enough, and it was sometimes wrong. We have as a core value that we need to do our own discernment. We are driven to do a free search for truth and meaning, not to accept what we are told. We are driven to do a free search for truth and meaning, not a search limited to one source. As Unitarians, we place a high value on thinking for ourselves and finding our own way. Back in the 1970s, it was even common for our children's programs to teach about a variety of world religions, but not even mention our own Unitarian principles. Parents didn't want to impose their views on their own children. They showed their kids many different views and encouraged a free search for truth and meaning. So what truth could we find in Buddhism, paganism, humanism, Judaism, Sufism, and so on? So much searching to do, so we searched and we searched and we searched. As Mick Jagger once said, I'm free to do what I want, free to sing my song, not the song that was handed down to me. Freedom, oh freedom, yes, freedom, cry freedom. So there's so many jokes about how free Unitarians are when we change light bulbs. We're just so free. Freedom, 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 freedom. But there is a problem. We have a limited view of what to do with our freedom. We don't know what we don't know. Just like my grandparents who grew up with Methodism, I grew up with 1980s pop music. I didn't love it, but it was okay. I didn't feel the need to run from it and find something else. There was a song called The Reflex. I didn't know what that song was about, and I wouldn't have vouched for it in debate, but it was on the radio and it was good enough. But when I discovered Pink Floyd, it was like my eyes opened up to a whole new world. Youth, protest music, the dark side of the moon, a floating rainbow prism in outer space. It was bold and mysterious. I thought that Pink Floyd was the best band in the world. So different from everything else. They were outside of the box. But little did I know how far inside the box I was, and how much more there was outside the box. When the movie Stand By Me came out, I discovered 1950s pop music. When I dropped out of school and went hitchhiking out west, I discovered Bob Marley sung around campfires, singing about redemption. Wow, what a rush. I found out about Indigenous chanting in many, many varieties, so much richness. And then I discovered the richness of music that is created in the moment while being with people who are dancing with abandon. I discovered how erotic Beethoven's piece for Elisa can be when you remember that it was written for a lover and not a typewriter. So we are surrounded by so much, but we don't always see it, even if we think we are free. In the mid-1800s, Unitarian minister Theodore Parker said, "Look at the facts of the world. You see a continual and progressive triumph of the right. And by right, he meant the good. So you see a continual and progressive triumph of the right. I do not pretend to understand the moral universe. The arc is long, my eyes reach but little ways, but from what I see, I am sure it bends towards justice. So as far as Parker could see, things were getting better. He does say in the same paragraph that the injustices of slavery needed to be made right. He was aware of that problem. But apparently he didn't see problems with the continuing genocide of First Nations people or the continuing expansion of colonialism. So Theodore Parker acknowledged that he had a limited view, but even so, I think he underestimated how much he didn't know. And we can have a limited view, not just as individuals, but as a community. The author Eric Hoffer says that when people are free to do as they please, they usually imitate each other. So the Society of Nonconformists, it doesn't exist, let's pretend. The Society of Nonconformists doesn't realize that they're all wearing the same style of clothing. Alternative music becomes not music that is outside the box, but music that is in a box labeled alternative music, as boxed in as the music it was trying to escape. As Unitarians, we need to be ever vigilant that in our freedom, we are not boxing ourselves in. So to summarize, we want the freedom to search for truth and meaning, but we have a limited view, so we can't search as freely as we'd like. So how can we see beyond our horizons? How can we see outside of our paradigm? How do we see outside of our Overton window? Wonder if you've heard that term. The Overton window is the window of conceivable beliefs, what people could possibly believe. So how do we see outside of our Overton window? Imagine you are a Greek grandmother in the 1980s, and your grandchild brings home their new partner. Your grandchild says, "My partner is vegetarian. Can you feed us something vegetarian?" What does it mean to be vegetarian, you ask? It means we don't eat meat. Can you feed us something else? You think for a moment, and then your eyes brighten up. Lamb. We will have lamb. So this sad tale has happened far too often, but we don't have to frame it as a sad tale because it can have a happy ending. Oh, vegetarians don't eat lamb either. Okay, thank you for telling me. I'll go Google vegetarian now so that I can learn more. We can get outside of our paradigm by having new people in our lives, expanding our Overton window, and by taking responsibility ourselves for learning more. Now, without picking on men, I will say this to men. There are things about you that every woman in the room sees that you don't know about. So you can get beyond your paradigm simply by opening up to the other points of view in the room with curiosity rather than defensiveness. We talked in my sermon last week about potlucks, 2 weeks ago. Go to potlucks that were not made for you. As Unitarians, we can be gung-ho at doing this, trying out new rituals and traditions from other cultures, but too often we do it as tourists rather than as novices. Get outside your paradigm, go where other people are at the center. Go with humility. Go with openness. Go as a newborn. We can get so used to riding up and down the elevators of our lives that we forget that there is a staircase, another way to move through the world. As we ride our elevators, we can forget that there are other paradigms, other contexts, other ways of being. So continually make the choice to see beyond your horizon by putting other people at the center. In addition to our UU principles, we have 6 UU sources, 6 sources to draw from so that we are not trapped within our own paradigms. These sources include the universe itself, which we can experience with awe and wonder, words and deeds of prophetic people, world religions, humanist teachings, earth-centered ways of being. So many ways to expand our horizons. But these 6 sources, which are meant to challenge us, can become a source of comfort and familiarity. We commune with the universe. We quote Martin Luther King Jr. We do a circle dance at solstice. It can be so comforting. I believe that the second source could be doing a lot more work if we shook it up a bit. The second source is words and deeds of prophetic people. So, well, which people are we talking about? Prophetic people are people who shake things up. If you're comforted by a prophetic voice, that voice is no longer prophetic for you. It's found a home within your paradigm. So where can we find voices that rock your world? The Our Whole Lives curriculum has one answer. Our Whole Lives, or OWL, is a sexuality curriculum that helps us to learn about ourselves and the whole range of human ways of being. The OWL curriculum says that there is a lot of wisdom at the margins. People who aren't in the mainstream paradigm are forced by circumstance to explore new ways of being. People who don't fit into the 1950s nuclear family. So lesbians and gays, often with joy, but too often painfully, expand what is understood as normal and beloved. Bisexuals say, we're here too. Trans people say, we're here too. Non-binary, asexual, genderqueer people, on, continually expanding the Overton window. So where can we find prophetic voices? Often at the margins. So to summarize, we want the freedom to search for truth and meaning, but we have a limited view, so we can't search as freely as we'd like. We need to be intentional about searching beyond our paradigm. And in particular, we need to turn towards the margins. And if you are at the margin in some way, you are at the center in some other way. So you can always find people that you're not noticing. Even the margins have margins. If you are free and irresponsible, you might do a search for truth and meaning, come across Elvis Presley and say, Eureka, I have found it. Music doesn't get any better than this. But Elvis did not invent his music out of nowhere. Elvis copied Black musicians and Black traditions. Before he met his manager knew the music, but because of racism, he needed to find a white person to play it. If you are free and irresponsible, your search will stop with Elvis Presley. But if you are free and responsible, what can you do? In what ways do I need to be accountable to help me to get beyond Elvis? First and foremost, I need to be accountable to my own conscience. If our society turns Elvis into music that is meant to calm you down in the elevator, my conscience needs to say, this isn't right. Music is meant to be alive, toe tapping, soul expanding. Your conscience often knows when something isn't right. Human connection is meant to be beloved, heartfelt, forgiving, challenging, joyful. Your conscience often knows when something isn't right. but my conscience can be lulled into complacency. I accept that life includes compromise, and then when things don't feel right, I brush it aside as just the way life is. So sometimes my conscience tells me that my conscience isn't enough. My conscience tells me that I have to suspend disbelief and open myself up to other people's consciences. Suppose your conscience allows you to go to your workplace's Christmas party, even though it is soul destroying. You talk to a friend about it, and your friend's conscience says, you can skip the party, it's okay. The two of you talk it through and you integrate their conscience into your point of view. Maybe your conscience tells you that your workplace is way too hierarchical. Perhaps you're in academia. But a job is a job, so you stay with it. Other people don't make it into the hierarchy and are forced by circumstance to develop other ways of relating. Their conscience tells them that their ways are worth spreading. Your conscience needs to expand to include consciences that are at the margins, that have something to say about how society is organized. The proposed eighth principle has the word accountably in it. So what does accountability look like when we care so much about freedom? Accountability does not mean putting aside your own conscience and depending on other people's consciences for approval. I think accountability means suspending disbelief long enough to be able to integrate other paradigms into your perspective. If changing our minds was easy, if noticing things was easy, we wouldn't need prophetic voices to shake things up for us. Now, integrating other points of view doesn't mean believing everything people tell you. And frankly, I think most prophetic voices are wrong. If you only hear the right ones, maybe you're in a wonderful community of right people. I think most prophetic voices are wrong. So one of your friends will tell you, do go to the office Christmas party and teach everyone the moves to the song Thriller. They'll think that's a good idea, but that only sometimes works. So be careful. So get input from multiple friends before deciding what to do about the work party. And when considering how to reorganize society, get input from multiple groups who are promoting another way from the margins. We all have blind spots. We need to suspend disbelief and get other points of view. We are all privileged in some way, and that privilege means that we can't see what everyone else in the room can see. So suspend disbelief, crank open your Overton window, and go beyond your horizons. Look to the margins. There is so much more to see. Ask yourself, in what ways am I settling for Elvis? And what can I do so that I too can leave the building and have a search for truth and meaning that, by being responsive to other paradigms, becomes even freer? our benediction is The Larger Circle by Wendell Berry. We clasp the hands of those that go before us and the hands of those who come after us. We enter the little circle of each other's arms and the larger circle of love with hands joined in a dance, and the larger circle of all creatures passing in and out of life, who move also in a dance to a music so subtle and vast that no one hears it except in fragments. May we seek out what fragments of truth we can, and may we join our fragments, be enriched by each other's fragments. May we find the world, the whole world, with our love.
Thank you so much, Reverend Ben. Thanks a lot for your thoughtful and personal sermon today and your wonderfully chosen readings and pop rock references. We're excited to be able to hear you speak once more next week before you join the congregation of Hillsborough. A reminder to our Hamilton friends, today's meeting with Sacagawea has been postponed. And a slight correction from earlier, my apologies. Thursday evening reflections with Reverend Lynn will resume this week, Thursday, August 12th, but Tuesday Awakenings will start the following week on August 17th. I now invite you to join groups for small group discussion around a question from Reverend Ben. What is a time when you saw beyond your horizon? That guiding question again is, when is a time when you saw beyond your horizon? To join those groups, simply accept the invitation when prompted. And in closing, may you be brave, open, and humble in your free and responsible search for truth and meaning, finding the wisdom in the margins. We hope to see you again here soon.